What's up, y'all? My name is Tyler Adelfo. I'm 27 years old. I have a diagnosis of bipolar type 1 with psychotic features, which has had severe impacts on my life. I want to share in this video two time periods of my life where I have had to start over. One of those time periods is when I became a high school dropout. The other time period is when I had a 6-month long bipolar manic episode during which I experienced a wide array of delusions and hallucinations. And I'm going to specifically draw your attention to the depressive episode that followed that mania, because that's where I had to start over, and that manic episode had drastic consequences. So starting off with high school. My high school experience was anything but ordinary. I had to repeat my ninth grade year due to the fact that I missed the entire second half of my first ninth grade year. Now, my second ninth grade year, I actually missed the entire first half as well. I was deeply depressed at the time. I was severely bullied. My grandmother had passed away very recently, and that was taking its toll on my mental psyche. But something notable happened during that second ninth grade year is people started to care and notice. People started to want to help. And I formulated a plan with the school administrators to help me get caught up in school and eventually integrate me back into the classroom. I remember working with this retired teacher who worked with me as my personal teacher one-on-one, as like a mentor. She would monitor my progress towards getting caught up, and eventually that led to me going to 2 classes a day, and then 3 classes a day, and then all my classes a day. By the end of the semester, things were going extraordinarily well. So well that the following semester I decided to sign up for all honors classes. And this was my most successful school year of all my schooling experience. I had straight A pluses in every single one of my honors classes. I ended up winning a school poetry competition, advanced all the way to the state semifinals in my first year of competition, won a Student of the Month award for my birth month, December. I was proud of that. Joined the mock trial team, and I got elected president of my class. And keep in mind, this was an entirely new group of people because, as I mentioned, I had to repeat my ninth grade year. So this aren't the people that I grew up with. These are people who I had only known for about a year, maybe a little longer. And over the course of that year, I was able to establish a lot of beneficial relationships despite being highly introverted. And I attribute a lot of that success to me being on a medication called Zoloft. It was the right drug for the time, is how I would put it. Allowed me to be successful in the classroom. Previously, I would experience such high degrees of anxiety that it would feel like I'm falling out of my seat. I couldn't even read, like I would start to lose my breath. I couldn't even read out loud in class. It was highly embarrassing. So I had this successful school year, totally transformed with medication and my resilience and persistence. And then I dropped out of high school about 8 days into the following school year, my junior year. Why? Well, during the summer, I discovered an intelligence test, and it used incredibly harsh language, and the results of the test were antithetical to what I had believed about myself, that I was an intelligent person, that I was smart, that I was competent mentally. And this IQ test I discovered went against everything I had believed in myself, and I became fixated, attention-wise, on this ideal of improving my intelligence. And one of the things I did, and this was an incredibly stupid decision, was I quit Zoloft cold turkey. And in doing so, I started to experience lots of social anxiety, which makes sense considering that Zoloft, I was originally put on it for social anxiety. Going into my junior year, remember I got elected class president, and now at this point I'm taking, I believe, it was 3 or 4 advanced placement courses. I can't remember, but I was taking a lot. I lasted 8 days. I was so overwhelmed with anxiety, I just couldn't do it anymore. I remember going to the guidance office and said, I'm here to fill out the papers to drop out of high school. And the guidance department was confounded. They couldn't believe what they were hearing because one of their top performing students now wants to leave high school. It didn't make a lot of sense, but that's where I was at that point. I still remember being at home one day, laying in bed, just overwhelmed with self-doubt, self-loathing. And my mom came in to inform me that she had signed the papers and that, I've dropped out of high school. Eventually, I started a journal. And the first sentence that I put in that journal, my very first entry, fear, doubt, and uncertainty. The reason is because those were the words that encapsulated my life. Those were the words that defined my life at that particular moment. And I had to navigate this new life of isolation, whereas before I was involved in mock trial, I was involved in student government, participating in competitions, all kinds of extracurriculars, and going above and beyond in the classroom. And now I was totally socially isolating. I became suicidal at points and didn't want to live. There was a day where I had an epiphany. Walked into the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and an amorphous face looked back at me, totally lacking in shape or definition. I could not recognize myself anymore. And it was at that moment I decided that I needed to do something. I decided to start walking outside again and to lose weight. In order to expedite my weight loss, I started dieting. And before you know it, I got into incredibly good shape. I got down to like an all-time low for me of about 165 to 170-ish pounds. And I established this goal that someday I'll return to school and I will get my high school diploma. I'll be the first in my immediate family to do so. And that's exactly what I did. I contacted guidance department, and they were quite resistant to the idea at first. I remember them saying that, you should just go for your GED and go to community college. But I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get my high school diploma. So that's what I set out to do. And I remember choosing classes and saying that I wanted AP classes. And them saying, at this point, Tyler, AP classes are off the table. And I thought to myself, why would that be? I had a hardship. I got through it. I'm ready to resume my education, and I want to take courses that match my work ethic. They capitulated eventually, and I was able to take the course load I wanted to take. And once again, I would encounter a significant hurdle. I returned to school in 2017, fall. Mind you, I was out of school for 2 years at this point, largely socially isolating. I did have a cashier job at Dollar Tree for a bit of time, but it didn't last too long. It didn't even last a year. But that was the extent of my social interaction outside of school and outside the home. I returned to school expecting grand success, but that didn't happen. I made it a few weeks into the school year. I do remember having one interesting moment where we had a debate in advanced placement in United States history, and I put on such an impeccable performance in that debate, giving closing statements, giving rebuttals, giving opening statements, and so forth. Members of the mock trial team after were saying, wow, you should join the mock trial team. They had no idea that I was actually already on it years ago. And, that felt good. That was a self-esteem boost. But I just couldn't get over the anxiety. I wasn't on medication at the time. And I was struggling to interact with people socially. I was having that feeling again of like I'm gonna fall out of my desk because of how bad the anxiety is. I remember a friend of mine actually coming up to me at one point and said, "Tyler, is everything all right?" And I actually didn't know him too well at the time, but he would later become a good friend. And I just really had nothing to say. I said, "Yeah, I'm fine," which was not the truth, but that's what I said. And so there was a day where I decided I was going to end it all. I could not deal with this anymore. I was now in school with the younger siblings of my friends from previous years, and it just felt like I was so far behind, that I was such a massive failure. I went to a park with a bunch of knives, and my intention was to end my life. I called the police department and told the emergency operator to send an ambulance to pick up my body, and I hung up the phone. I did not end my life that day. The police officers were compassionate and were able to successfully talk me out of doing so. I went to the emergency room in my local town. I was evaluated by someone, and they decided that they'll release me on the condition that I attend a partial hospitalization program. So I agreed. For a little more than 2 weeks, I attended this program, intensive amounts of therapy, group therapy sessions. And the activities were excellent. I think that they were highly beneficial to myself. They were something I needed at the time. And it allowed me to get into a room with a doctor who could prescribe me medication. And I told him about the success I've had on Zoloft. And he put me on Zoloft again. And so I started taking that during the duration of the program, and I slowly integrated back into school and had a very successful school year. I joined the mock trial team, and we swept our division, made the playoffs for the first time in history. I got scores of 5 on both of my advanced placement exams, AP English Language Composition and AP United States History, and 5 is the highest score you can get. It means you're extremely well qualified for college credit. Now, I had lots of absences during the school year. Nonetheless, I was able to manage the course load. I was so resilient, I would not make excuses for anything. I didn't have Wi-Fi at home, so I couldn't do my online assignments at home. I would walk to McDonald's and use their Wi-Fi to work on school assignments. And it kind of became like a part of my personality and my identity. Everybody knew what I was doing. Everybody knew that I would go to McDonald's and do that. And it was hard, it was challenging, but I did what I had to do. So that was my junior year. And then the following senior year, I had another successful school year. I entered a speech competition which began with 900 students as part of the Lions Club of Massachusetts. And I became one of the 5 state finalists. Ultimately ended up losing, but I made thousands of dollars as part of this competition, which was very nice. I participated in DECA, Distributive Educational Clubs of America, for the first time, which is an organization that provides high school and college students opportunities to learn and become competent in different areas of business. I chose the category business finance. And in my first year of doing DECA, I won first place in District 7. I won first place in the state of Massachusetts. And then I qualified for the international competition, ICDC, which is the International Career Development Conference. So I had a phenomenal year. Oh, and I passed all 4 of my advanced placement exams. This time I believe I got a 5, a 4, and 2 3s. And I was awarded, as a result of my AP performance, the AP Scholar with Distinction accolade. That title meant a lot to me. And the year culminated with me getting accepted into my dream university. So I had to start over after dropping out of high school, and as you can see, there were bumps in the road, but ultimately things worked out and I was able to achieve a relatively successful outcome. And my first 2 years at the University of Massachusetts Amherst kind of built on that success. That momentum carried forward. Now I'm going to talk about the manic episode that disrupted that. But before that, I was working full time at the Amherst Chamber of Commerce. I made the mock trial team my freshman year. We were highly competitive, so it was an honor to be a part of that. I ran for Student Senate and won. I was appointed to the Faculty Senate Program and Budget Council as the student representative. I ended up pledging and joining a college fraternity my junior year, Kappa Sigma, Gamma Delta chapter. And I spent my first semester as a brother living in the fraternity house, which in hindsight was the wrong decision to do. I think that it was a huge contributing factor to the manic episode that I would experience. And just over the course of the semester, I was losing sleep, started experiencing racing thoughts, and then that transformed into delusions of grandiosity and delusions about how the world operates. I thought that I was capable of anything and everything, that I was the smartest person in the world, and that eventually became beliefs of, oh, Nazi agents or communists are coming after me. Oh, my brothers are out to get me. Let me barricade myself in my fraternity room. I would walk in the backyard, and I had hallucination phone calls with a military general that did not exist. Full-blown conversations with this military general that did not exist. Imagine how spooked people must have been. I understand, and I don't cast any blame or feel any ill will towards my brothers, because they're all a bunch of 20-somethings and they're not mental health experts, neither was I. And the expectation can't be for them to know how to intervene and deal with a situation like that. The school year ended. I was sent to a psych ward, actually. Cops met me at Campus Pond at midnight. I had planned on holding a press conference. I was super manic at the time. And the press conference was to be about sexual assault on campus and corruption at UMass. A whole bunch of nonsense. Police were there. Ambulance came, took me in to the Cooley Dickinson Hospital psych ward, where I resided for 5 days. During those 5 days, I only became more manic, and upon release, I was probably the craziest I had been at that point in time. Things only got worse. This would drag on for months and months. I started disseminating all kinds of nonsensical conspiracies on my social media accounts. I started calling out and casting aspersions about other people's character on my social media accounts, embarrassed myself on community Facebook forums, embarrassed myself to my 1,000 followers on Instagram, posted all kinds of embarrassing Snapchat stories. And during all this, I both felt on top of the world while simultaneously feeling terrified and like I was living a nightmare. Eventually, I would get treatment, and that was in the form of a partial hospitalization program. So 6 months into the manic episode, I entered into a partial program in my hometown. I was put on a medication called Abilify, and very speedily that medication pulled me out of the depths of mania. And I started to realize everything that I had done, everything that I had said and done. And I felt so embarrassed and ashamed. How could I say this? How could I do that? Why would I do that to this person? Why would I do that to that person? Lots of self-regret, lots of self-loathing. My self-esteem plummeted. I started to socially isolate, and I had a years-long depressive episode where I was super hard on myself. Isolating myself in my bedroom, having racing thoughts about everything that had transpired. going on LinkedIn and comparing myself to my former fraternity brothers or friends from college and seeing how far they were advancing in life and all the successful outcomes they were experiencing and comparing it to what I was going through, it took its toll on me. I went on a journey of trying out trial and error, all kinds of different medications, and it took a long time to find the medication cocktail that was ideal for me. Fortunately, I was eventually able to find it. The medication regimen that ended up working for me was Wellbutrin, Vraylar, add effects using hand gestures. I've never seen that message pop up before, but okay, I digress. Lexapro and Lamotrigine. Those 4 medications are the cocktail that worked best for me, and I'm still on those today. On those medications, I was able to get a job again, and I quickly got 2 promotions. I became a shift manager at my local pharmacy retail chain. I ended up leaving that job eventually, and I have a video where I talk about why I quit that job. And that place ended up closing a few months later anyhow, but anyways, I was able to work again when I thought that I would never, ever hold a job ever again. I applied to a local university, and I got accepted. I thought that surely, because of the circumstances under which I got expelled at my previous school, that I would never get into school again, and I was wrong. This university took me in, and I'm profoundly grateful for that. Like, cannot stress that enough. So, had the job, got accepted to a university, started going to the gym at certain points to get some of the weight off. I did put on a lot of weight. I went from 180 to 354 at my highest. Went down to like 310, back to 320, down to 300, and now currently I'm at 330 again. Ouch. Not where I want to be. But my point is that I have what it takes to lose the weight. I know what I need to do. I just need to do it. So this was a huge instance of starting over. And there's similarities to me being a high school dropout experiences that I felt like my life was over, and that turned out to not be the case. I went on to achieve successful outcomes, and I feel like I'm only just starting to reap the benefits of recovering from this manic episode. I feel like the best days lie ahead of me, and I'm highly confident in my competency, and I know that I have what it takes to succeed. On most days. There's some days where I'm hard on myself when I fall back into that, depressive mindset, but I'm at peace with where I am. I'm not entirely content, but I can tolerate where I am. And I know this is not the end. I know that I have a lot of potential going forward. One of the lessons I've learned from this is that nothing worth having comes easy. You're going to have to go through some tumultuous times. You're going to encounter obstacles. Expecting the worst will accelerate your downfall. Don't focus on others. Where others are is irrelevant. Focus on yourself and your own growth. And be proactive. Set micro goals to build momentum towards your macro goals. That's exactly what I did during these 2 time periods of my life where I had to start over. I started off with micro goals that added up to become bigger goals. And it worked for me. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope that you can resonate or learn something from my experiences. If so, please hit that subscribe button and definitely hit that like button so that more people can see this video. Thank you all so much for watching. My name is Tyler Adolfo. Love, light, and tranquility to all.